Hello everybody and welcome back to Red Eagle Politics. Make sure you guys like this video down below and subscribe to the channel if you are new. So we've had a lot of polls released lately for the 2026 midterms, national polls that is, for the generic congressional vote. And this is important because if Republicans win the generic ballot, they probably hold the House. Although you also have this mid-decade redistricting that on net is going to favor Republicans by a few points, and Democrats may need to win the generic ballot by more than they originally would have in order to retake the House. And what is happening now? Well, you see the polls. Democrats had a lead of about 3 to 4 points in the national generic ballot. That lead has declined recently. It has declined to a 1.6 percentage lead over the Republicans, and that is not enough. And for those people that want to talk about this massive blue wave, well, let's look at how historically awful this number is for the Democrats. Because look at this. In 2017, they actually led by like 13 points towards the end of the year. They ended up winning the generic ballot by 8 to 9 points, and they had a lead October 17th, which was yesterday, last night when this tweet was written. They had a lead of 9 points. So Republicans barely outran that, but still you could kind of tell that the polling was relatively accurate. They didn't see this massive surge towards the end compared to where their polls were this day in history. And then you look at 2021 ahead of 2022, and a lot of Republicans would, consider 2022 to be a disappointing year, but still it was somewhat of a red wave. Democrat gerrymandering and redistricting definitely threw a wrench in a good chunk of that. That's true. But still, the Democrats led the polling by 2.3%, more than they do now, and you had this mini red wave that just happened to not be very efficient, and the poll still underestimated Republicans by 5.1%. If they did that now, or if they underestimated Republicans at all, Republicans would easily win the House. And we understand how the Senate map is. We could pull this up here. This is the consensus map. There are some races that could go either way, but it's more likely that Republicans are going to walk out of the midterms with 56 Senate seats than Democrats are going to walk out of the midterms with 50. And even then they would need 51 to hold, or to flip the Senate, I should say, because J.D. Vance is the vice president, and the vice president is who breaks the ties. So that is not really the best situation for the Democrats to be in, because Donald Trump is going to be able to pass through his judges, and the Senate's very important. And there's a good chance that if Republicans hold steady at 52, 53, Democrats may not have control of the Senate again for decades unless there's this massive realignment, which would likely take place further down the line. And a lot of this is because Democrats have failed to learn from their mistakes, and Donald Trump is delivering for the American people. You had a big foreign policy victory. I mean, you have a lot of foreign policy victories. He settled, at least for now. You have a ceasefire in the Israel-Gaza conflict. You have the Armenia-Azerbaijan conflict that is at a ceasefire because of Trump, and you have plenty of other conflicts across the globe. And I always said the dominoes will fall. Russia, Ukraine, that's another big one. Maybe you make a deal where you buy more, oil directly from Russia to get the war to end, or something like that. That could be huge because it lowers prices. In the meantime, yeah, we should drill here, but still, lowering the rate of inflation. It all goes through energy. Goods are transported. I mean, that's a very, very big deal if he's able to get that done, or if we could lower gas prices even more, which they have gone down. I mean, the average person's economy has not really improved a whole lot since Trump has taken office, but it's also not declined like it was under Biden, to the point where I don't think the average independent voter is really too fond of either party with the economy right now. But if you see what's going to happen, and if you see any sort of improvement because of the Big Beautiful Bill next year, I mean, already GDP growth is like 4% in the third quarter. That's huge. That's better than a lot of these other countries. The whole tariff hysteria is kind of just proven to not entirely be all that true. So if you see some economic improvement that's noticeable, I mean, if this is the Republicans' floor, they could really have a great midterm year. And it's like Democrats are the high propensity party. When less people vote than a presidential year, they tend to do better. But still, it's not impossible because the Democrats are just so awful, and everybody can see that Republicans could have a good year in 2026. It could be a repeat of 2022 even. It depends on the location. Educational trends can kind of dictate the propensity of where Republicans do better and where Democrats do better. That's still enough math, especially given redistricting, for Republicans to go out there and win the House, and we understand that. And it's also the shutdown thing. Democrats thought a shutdown would hurt Donald Trump. Well, according to the polling, it's hurting them. And yeah, you have a Republican trifecta, but you need 60 votes in the Senate to keep the government open. And Democrats are unwilling to provide enough votes for that to happen. And almost every Democrat's voting to shut down the government. Almost every Republican, except Rand Paul, who basically should switch parties to the Libertarian Party at this point, they're voting to keep the government open. So it doesn't really stick, it doesn't land, and they're dying on the hill of, certain subsidies for Obamacare have to be extended because, well, a lot of it has to do with how it protects illegal alien healthcare. They say it doesn't happen, but it's like at the state level, it does happen. They deny that. And Republicans are open to extending the subsidies in a more streamlined manner in a standalone bill. Democrats don't want to do that because we understand why, and it's not really working out in their favor. And the government shut down. Now it's 40 days, 41 days as the betting odds show. And it's just like, I'm not entirely sure that the average American is even feeling any negative effects from it or even realizes the government isn't open. But those that are possibly, changing their preference in 2026 based on it are not backing the Democrats at all. I mean, you round that 45% to 44%. You got a lot of undecideds. That's true. You got a long way to go. But again, there's not this massive anger that you saw in 2018 against Trump. And Trump is more popular now than the Democrats are. That wasn't the case in the polling in 2017 or 2018. And Democrats were polling at or near 50%, sometimes above at this stage in the game. Now they can't really get above 45, and the Republicans are right there with them. And it's also true, the old guard, the Paul Ryans, the Kevin McCarthys, the Mitch McConnells, they're no longer the face of the party. Donald Trump is the face of the party, and he's more popular than he ever was in his first term, and that is a good thing. And he will get more popular if he can deliver more with his economic policies. And again, Rome wasn't built in a day. It wasn't. We understand that. And a lot of these predictions the Democrats have just completely fallen, on their faces. It's hilarious. The Democrats and the panicans alike who tend to aid and abet the Democrats. But I wanted to show this flow chart for the House because let's just say no states redistrict. The New York Times forecasts a 0.2% Democrat generic ballot victory as what is necessary for the Democrats to regain control of the House. And I have a problem with that, mainly because of the fact that we don't know the distribution. For example, if you see lower turnout among like Trump voting Hispanics in New York City or Los Angeles, well, technically the generic ballot could be a few, 2 points more Democrat and not affect any seats. It comes down to the swing seats, and money goes a long way, and Republicans have actually done a much better job fundraising for the midterms than the Democrats. So there's a lot to go into this, but this is relatively a favorable outlook for the Democrats from the New York Times. And then they go on to say Texas, being the only state to redistrict, would make sure they have to win the generic ballot by what the current polling shows, actually, to just break even in the House. Now, California is very likely to redistrict. That still knocks it down to 0.3, but then Ohio, Missouri, and Indiana. And we could add North Carolina to the list and Florida to the list. It goes back up to a 3-point Democrat victory. And then they're saying that if the Voting Rights Act Section 2 gets struck down, overturned by the Supreme Court, which is increasingly likely at this stage in the game, Democrats might need to win the generic ballot by 5 points to retake the House, and I don't see that happening. And you could look at the House map right here. And yes, California is not officially taken into account. Maybe you knock the Republicans down to like 210, but then you do Indiana, Ohio, North Carolina, Florida. They're going to be knocking on the door of 218, where Democrats need to win like 18 of the 21 toss-ups, if not more than that, in order to go out there and retake control of the House. It's not likely. It's not. I mean, we saw what Democrats did, their power grabs ahead of 2022, and Republicans are doing it. Democrats are still trying to do it, but they're maxed out, and we're beating them at their own game, and we're getting rid of these provisions of, these antiquated laws, basically, that are laws that are meant to just hand out seats like free candy to Democrats because of the color of the skin of people who live in those districts. And that's not meritocracy. That's not what we want. And it's like, you can just do things. It is true. Trump's term has kind of, shown us that he's effective. That's why they, call him all these names. He's kind of a pragmatic moderate in a way. He's a nationalist. That's true. He loves his country, wants to conserve his country, but he's not, too much of a social conservative. I think that's what kind of broadens his appeal to, segments of the younger generation, and in certain places like, Michigan and Wisconsin that might be a little bit more secular than parts of the Deep South are, and that's why he can outrun a lot of like traditional Republicans in those places. But it's like you have the Democrats, all these old people going out there today with their little No Kings protests, and it's like, you guys want exactly that. You guys want a bureaucracy that Trump is trying to dismantle to rule over the American people under the guise of democracy. Democracy, they say. It's never about authoritarianism or who is a king. They don't like Trump because he's effective and because he's delivering on his promises. And the American people, usually when a president's party is out of power, you lose a lot of seats. Trump lost like 40 seats in his first term. He might gain seats in his second term. That hasn't been done since 2002, and that's when George W. Bush, after 9/11, had an approval rating in the 80s and in the 90s. And we have a long way to go. That is true, but there's a lot of reason to believe that things could actually get worse for Democrats from this point forward, not better. So anyways, guys, thanks for watching this video. Like this video down below, comment down below, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell for notifications so you never miss another video. Follow me on social media. The links are all in the description down below, and I will see you guys in the next one. Red Eagle, out.